Hi everybody, Zee Garcia here, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 10 games of 2022 for 2 players. This is of course going to include games I've played, so anything I have not played will not make the list. And it's going to be games that are fantastic at 2, basically for the most part games that are just for 2, but with a couple of exceptions. Games that I think do thrive at that player count. It's going to be all sorts of games. Most of them are brand new and original. Some are sort of reworkings of previous games that have been available in the past. And I'll just mention that when we get to it. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into it with my number 10. And that number 10 for me is a fully abstract game called, I think, Laniakea. Laniakea here is a game in which you're trying to get your pieces across a shifting board to the opposite side while the opponent's trying to do the same thing. On your turn, you will be moving pieces and you will be shifting these rows, which feature blank spaces and turtles. Those turtles stop your movement. I love the idea of the better you do in this game, meaning the more pieces you've gotten across, the weaker your position is on the board because you have fewer pieces available to you. Really like it, and if you like abstracts, you should check this one out. My number 9 pick technically is also an abstract game, though this one has a theme, a little bit more of a theme, and it has quite interesting components. This is Ragnar Rocks. In Ragnar Rocks, you are trying to cut off sections of the board to claim spaces. And you will be moving your pieces on the board, setting out these stones that separate and break up the landscape in order to claim that space. The real big twist here is that the players can, if they choose to do so, play with these special abilities that they will have access to. You have a power for the entire game, and that power is going to radically change the things you can and cannot do. They're going to turn some of the core rules in the game on their head. How you move, where you go, things you can jump or not jump, how you win even might be different. And so I really find it fascinating. Exploring all the different combinations, that's going to be a lot of fun. So my number 9, Ragnar Rocks. My number 8 is Marvel Dice Throne. Now, Dice Throne is a game that has been out in the past. There's various editions of it. But Marvel Dice Throne takes that Marvel intellectual property and really utilizes it well. It gives us brand new character designs. These are not reskins of previous ideas or designs. They're all brand new. You get 8 of those that are available out there, and you can mix and match who goes up against whom. This is a dice-chucking Yahtzee-style game in which you are trying to roll specific combinations of dice and attacking your opponents, trying to take their life down to 0. You'll also have some card play and some combo management in it. There's a lot of wings here and a lot of fun enjoyment for fans of Marvel things. I really recommend that if you enjoy that, Marvel Dice Throne is fun to play, lighthearted, incredibly well made, and just enjoyable. My number 7 is probably my biggest stretch, but I think right now is a fantastic time to jump into this game. This is the Lord of the Rings, the card game, revised core set. Now, the Lord of the Rings, the card game, is a living card game that has been out for many years. It would be very difficult to want to get into this game right now if it was not for the revised core set that came out this year. Gives you everything you need to get into the story, to build some decks for yourself. You can play up to 4 players out of the box now, whereas before that was not possible. And you are getting new releases or re-releases that bring together previous content into a single box. If you're curious about this one, now this year is a great time to get into it. You can just get that core box. Everything you need is in there, been brought up to speed. And if you want to continue your journey from there, then you can just pick up the new reprinted line, which will be apparent, and enjoy the game without, again, all the messy backtracking. So, the Lord of the Rings, the card game revised core set is something I very much recommend this year. My next recommendation at number 6 here is something of an interesting card game as well. Not a living card game, but basically a collectible or trading card game. This is SoulForge Fusion. In this game, you'll be playing head-to-head with an opponent, and you are going to be playing cards to various lanes on the table, trying to attack their creatures, their creations, their take them down and win the game ultimately. The game has a very interesting idea in which you take two half decks, shuffle those together, and that will be your deck for the game. And these are procedurally generated, sort of computer-made, algorithmically created halves you buy, and then they cannot be modified, those halves. Just shuffle two together. Besides that, there's also an idea in which every time you play a character or a spell to the table, you will then find a leveled up version of that thing and put it in your discard pile. And so the next time you go through your deck, every single card you've played, whether it's a spell, a creature, what have you, if it shows up, it gets leveled up. And so the next time that thing shows up or happens, it's a souped up version of what you saw before. It's got a great cadence, this game. It just always is propelling itself forward and comes to a nice crescendo. So if you enjoy collectible card games, you like that head-to-head feel, Soulforge Fusion gives you that feeling in a really unique, creative, interesting, brand new kind of way. So check that one out, Soulforge Fusion. I tend to be a fan of games I enjoy that get dual or duet versions. And the latest one is Tokaido Duo in this case. Tokaido Duo is a bit of a spin on the original Tokaido, obviously only for 2 players, but in this one you have 3 different character movements happening at the same time. You have the classic, a character that moves around the outside, and depending on where it lands, you acquire something. That's what you're trying to do, and you'll get points from doing so. But there are 2 other ways in which characters move. There will be movement in zones on the inside, and another one that's going to be bouncing around these locations in between, getting you different goods as well. You'll be scoring from all 3 of these ideas, and if you have the highest score combining all 3 of those, you will win the game. The game is beautiful, it's clever, it feels like Tokaido, but not so much that it is unneeded or replaces Tokaido, and I think ideally that's what you want. You want to be reminded of the game that it is based on. You want it to be its own game as well. I think Tokaido Duo manages to do that very well. It gives you some interesting scoring, some interesting ideas, some nice tension, and does so while looking just as beautiful as the original Tokaido did. So there you go. That is Tokaido Duo if you want something very clever and interesting. I mentioned Marvel Dice Throne a little while ago, and here I go again. This is going to be Marvel Unmatched. Again, like I said, Unmatched has been out. You can play that game. Marvel is a brand new intellectual property that's been added to Unmatched. And you can, in fact, mix and match Marvel characters like Moon Knight and Daredevil, which are now available, with some previous content for Unmatched. I personally love to keep the characters together. And so there are 2 sets of these, more are coming, and I gotta tell you, I think these characters are fantastic. This is a game in which you are going to be moving around the board, attacking your opponent with a card, a face-down card. They may defend without seeing what you've got. Then you'll reveal those cards and see what happens. You can also play some actions to mess with your opponent, to shift yourself across the board. If you're a fan of Marvel and you like Unmatched, this is absolutely a no-brainer. If you haven't played Unmatched yet, though, and you like Marvel, this is a fantastic place to jump into this clever, engaging system. So I definitely recommend the 2 sets that are out for Marvel Unmatched, and there will be, like I said, more in the future, so that's always fun too. My number 3 is a quirky little game called Mindbug. Mindbug is a game in which you are going to be playing characters out in front of you, attacking your opponent. It's a little bit like a collectible card game, except it is not collectible. You'll simply buy a deck of cards. One really clever idea here is that the cards you can sometimes get are incredibly powerful. And while all the cards feel superb, some of them will feel very powerful to your opponent, or perhaps your opponent will play one and it feels incredibly powerful to you. You're thinking, oh boy, if I'd drawn that card, I'd be doing a lot better. I feel like this is a bit unfair. Well, the fun thing is, in Mindbug, you can just, a couple of times in the game, if your opponent plays something, you can just take it away from them. If it seems like they shouldn't have that card, you're allowed to, like I said, just a couple of times, go, that's mine now. and take it from across the table, put it on your side, and it's as though you played that character. So if you're looking again for something that is small, that is pretty unique in the cards with powers realm that I love to play games in, then I think Mindbug just might be one that you're going to get a kick out of. This one is really fun. So there you go. That's my number 3. My number 2 pick is Splendor Duel. I was talking about liking those kinds of games, and Splendor Duel is probably one of the very best examples of how to make the new duet or duel or what have you kind of game feel like the original in many ways, but stand on its own. I happen to think personally that Splendor Duel is way better than Splendor. I like Splendor alright. I think Splendor Duel is a fantastic game. It manages to give you that same feeling of collecting these gems, these really cool poker chips, and utilizing them smartly to buy you the cards you want to race to a certain number of victory points. You also are going to get discounts based on the cards you get. But above and beyond that, there's simply more game here than in the original Splendor. You now have multiple ways in which you can win. It's beautiful, it's engaging, it's quick, it's clever, and again, ultimately, reminds me of Splendor, does something entirely its own, in my opinion, even better. So Splendor Duel, great game. This one got knocked out of the park. And then lastly, my number 1 game for 2 players of the year here was Caper Europe. Caper Europe is a game in which you are going to have a crew of misfits, of hoodlums, of characters basically breaking into places and stealing things. And you will be deploying them to the table at various locations, giving them gear, and having them steal things for you. The idea here is that you are drafting, though. And so this is a game with only 2 players. It only works with 2. I'm going to have a hand of these characters. I will take one. I will place it at one of these 3 locations. And then I take that hand and I give it to my opponent and I'll take theirs. And so I need to be mindful what I'm giving up. And maybe after they play one of those, what am I getting back from those? You'll be, like I said, also equipping those characters. There's a lot of interesting little things you can manipulate in the game. And it is just so well balanced, so fun. It's so lighthearted in theme and the artwork. So Caper Europe is one of my favorite 2-player games in a long time, and it is my favorite 2-player game this year for sure. So you definitely want to check that one out. And that's it for me, folks. So there you go. That is my top 10 games of 2022 for specifically 2 players. My name is Zee Garcia. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to see you on the next one.